Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Blue Frontier. We're very excited to bring you a two-part episode today, of course, with it being a massive day for Everton Football Club. The news breaking earlier that Sean Dyche had been relieved of his duties as manager. So what we did was we hopped on X and recorded a space on the topic. We got a few listeners to come up and give their thoughts on the matter. So we're going to put that segment first, come back and do a segment, an abbreviated post-match episode on the Peterborough United match, 2-0 to Everton, advancing in the FA Cup. Very exciting stuff. Just wanted to give that a little preface. And before we get into the episode, just a reminder, show's new. We're still trying to rebuild our audience back to what we had on the old show, the NorCalToffee podcast. So if you could do us a solid, leave us a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. That helps us out a ton. We are now on YouTube as well. So if you want to watch us on YouTube, please do so. You can find all the links in the description of this episode. We're hoping to get to around 100 reviews. We're at 50 right now for both platforms. So we would really, really appreciate it. Help other people find the show so we can keep rebuilding our audience back to where it was before. But thanks everyone in advance for that. And without further ado, we're going to get right into the episode.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Appreciate it. Pardon the technical difficulties. This is what happens when James gets ambitious.
It is indeed. And I've done this before, but it's been a while. So I think I have it all set now. We will be releasing this on the podcast feed as well. So just a forewarning to anyone who's going to come up and speak that you will be released on the podcast. So if that's a deal breaker for you, then I'd recommend you don't come up. But with that said, really excited to kick this off. It's been an exciting day in the world of Everton as Sean Dyche was relieved of his duties as of earlier today, just a few hours before the FA Cup tie against Peterborough United. So we're going to kind of, I guess, give our instant match reactions. We're going to talk about how it all unfolded from what we know so far and just give the floor over to some listeners, some folks who want to come up and give their thoughts as well. So without further ado, of course, my name is James. I'm hosting from the account. This is our podcast, The Blue Frontier. We just started it on the first of the year, a kind of reboot of what was known as the NorCalToffee podcast, if you were familiar with that. And we've had a lot of content already, so make sure to give this account a follow. Go and follow the podcast as well. Leave us a rating and review on those platforms. We'd appreciate it a lot. And without further ado, I'll give it over to you, Sean, first. Your initial reactions on the day and how it kind of unfolded, obviously, with the announcement coming the same day as a match.
I think the reaction is positive, of course. It's just so fitting that like Alan Myers essentially puts those eyes emojis, and then kind of all hell breaks loose with the news. So obviously interesting timing given the cup match today, but at the end of the day, I'm glad it happened. Right, better late than never. Just of course very precarious. As we talk kind of in the podcast with the Friedkin group and just wanting to make things happen quickly. That the David Moyes kind of blinks have started. I think the listeners, I'm very kind of curious to hear their thoughts in regards to Moyes. I'm not incredibly negative about it, but I'm not incredibly positive about it. I'm kind of just somewhere in the middle. And there's no question. I'm very kind of fond of him, just given what he's done for us in the club, and also too, he's been incredibly professional throughout the years in regards to how he's talked about Everton, even when he was managing West Ham. So I do think he can do a fine job. But like I said, kind of want to hear what more of the listeners say. But good win today. Of course. Given the time we're on, we'd love to hear kind of your thoughts in regards to Sean Dyche as well as the new manager. But yeah, just want to kind of keep it running. But thanks for the shout out.
Ryan, you're up. Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, just really quick. We talked a lot about this on the pod and the team assessment, as well as other things, that the Friedkins want to operate in a modern fashion. I think there's always some questions whether Sean Dyche can really operate with the director of football. At Roma, they did that. We've talked about that history a lot. I recommend going back and listening to some of it if you want to learn a little bit without doing independent research and wasting your time. We do that for you. But yeah, I think the key is that if you want to do business in January, I think you're going to figure out pretty darn quickly that it wasn't going to work. Unfortunately, Sean just kind of did it to himself. I really think he did a very good job the 2 prior years, but it seemed obvious that he didn't want to play ball with recruitment. He used guys improperly, didn't use some guys at all. And unfortunately, the team assessment indicates this. The underlying data is terrible. The performance has been bad. So I think it was the right move. And hopefully it means we're going to do some business. So other than that, I think we should turn it over to the listeners.
Yeah, I'll just give my thoughts real quick, and then we have some people in the queue already. If you're interested in coming up and speaking, please put your hand up, request to come speak. We'd love to have you on board. I think you guys both put it really well. I think his time was effectively up, and I think after the Bournemouth match was really the tipping point for at least the three of us in particular. Certainly, we had our reservations and concerns, but this seemed like such an opportune moment with the cup match today, and then not playing until next Wednesday. A little bit of space and time, but there were obviously a lot of outstanding questions of how quickly the Friedkin group wanted to act. I don't think they necessarily wanted it to end this way, but from the reports that have come out, that Sean Dyche effectively said, "I've done all I can do," and didn't seem particularly interested in proceeding, which I thought was maybe interesting. But he's also maybe at the end of his rope, given the tumultuous nature of the last few years. And to your point, Ryan, I mean, you have to give the man credit for what he achieved with Everton in incredibly difficult circumstances over the last couple of years. So I think he'll be remembered for that. I hope he's remembered for that as we move further away and into this future of Everton, and the man who kind of allowed Everton to have this runway going into the last year of Goodison and the new stadium next year. A bright future indeed. So with that, we've got, I think, Nick, first and foremost, Nick Weinstein, come on up. I'll approve you. How's it going, Nick? You there?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Can hear you.
How are you?
Awesome. There was a brief pause and then I saw my mic was on, so just wanted to make sure I didn't interrupt anybody. Doing well, staying warm in the Northeast. How are we all today?
It's a great day, man. I can't complain. I mean, I didn't expect the news to come today, but I'm very relieved that it did.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Similar sentiment to all you guys. I think initially when he was appointed 2 years ago, I was lukewarm to say the least about it. I think, someone coming into the hell of a situation that Everton was in at the time, needs to be given their flowers for even taking the job in the first place. And I thought, the season prior and then last season, he did a good job. I mean, without the point deduction last year on 48 points with the squad that we had is pretty damn impressive. But like you guys said, this season, I think, has been as close to an abomination as it possibly could have been. And I think a few small tweaks in personnel and a little bit less stubbornness from the manager could have led us a little bit farther up the table. And, maybe he wouldn't have been in the position that he was in today before he was sacked. So for me, thanks to Dyche for the two previous seasons. Not so thanks to him for this season. And also, I really don't like the way he went out from the reports and from the articles that Paul Joyce wrote. It doesn't seem like he really went out the right way, which kind of shows in the message that Everton sent without even thanking him. In regards to Moyes, excited? No. Am I sad about it? No. I mean, when I started watching Everton, I think a lot of us shared the same. He was the guy in charge, and I thought he did an awesome job with us 20 some years ago. I think the game's passed him by a bit. The way he finished up with West Ham, I think, is a little bit alarming, even though he did bring them a European championship. So if it is a 6-month contract for Moyes, great. Hopefully he gets us to the finish line and gives some of our players a clean slate and doesn't have the favorites that Dyche has. I still do think we're a couple small tweaks away from being a competent side that isn't near the bottom of the table by the end of the season, and that would be a win for me. I'm excited for the summer. If Moyes is here until the end of the year, I'll be even more excited for the summer when we can get a really good manager in, have almost a whole squad overhaul, move into a new stadium. I think there will be a lot to look forward to. But in the interim, I think it's, calm, cool, and collected happiness. I'm not over the moon. But I think we'll be okay. I do. I think he'll make the necessary tweak that we need to make. And hopefully, if we do have any room to bring in a player or two this window, we can improve in the left back and in the right wing area. But for me, today's result, it is what it is. We won. Wasn't great. We're not a great team. I'm happy that we won. I'm happy that Dyche is gone, and somewhat optimistic about the future. We'll be more optimistic at the end of the season when we stay safe. Hopefully Moyes does his job, gets out, and we can almost have a completely clean slate going into Bramley Moore Dock.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Nick. I mean, I think the end of the season was always the target, right? We just need to get to the end of the season and get into Bramley Moore and get all of these players out of contract so that we can revamp the squad, financial concerns sort of lifted or alleviated for the most part. And to me, David Moyes is a really good option to do that for 6 months. No disrespect.
What about 18 months? I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah, I think that is the question, Ryan. I think that is the possible issue that we may run into is if the deal, the terms of the deal are going to exceed this season. And then, even if he does really well for 6 months, do you still want him to be the face leading Everton out? I think the fan base is honestly kind of divided on the topic, to be honest.
I mean, do do you want him to support recruitment in January? Like, I think there's some questions how well he does with the sporting director as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be his take. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at too. Like, we don't know what the deal with Thelwell is either. Like, is he going to be around at the end of the season? Are we going to be completely cleaning house, bringing in a new DOF, a new manager at the end of the season? I personally would love if it was just Moyes finishes out the year. I think Thelwell deserves a chance with a hopefully bigger budget and an opportunity to show that, he can bring guys in without having to be extremely creative and restricted on transfer fees,
and hire a manager. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's the biggest audition. I mean, if you look at what they did at Roma, it's got to be the sporting director that at least makes a recommendation. I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Certainly, though, you can't get rid of Kevin and the whole recruitment team before the window. I mean, that you can't do. So I kind of wonder if it's a situation where you didn't really have much of a choice. You had to keep him at least now. Maybe it was a decision between one or the other. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that.
A decision between one and the other on what, Ryan?
Dyche and Thelwell. Because, I mean, it's not like Kevin brought him in.
No.
And clearly there was disconnect if you see the utilization of players versus obviously how they were brought in and intended to play.
Yeah, I think Thelwell is one of the most divided opinions amongst the fan base. I think he gets a lot of shtick for, the guys he's brought in, but I think he arguably has the hardest job in the English Premier League, or he's had the hardest job in the league. He's had to be extremely creative. I think he's done well with the budget that he's been given and has brought players in that can perform well if they are put on the pitch in the right positions, which Dyche clearly hasn't done. So for me, I would love to see him given a chance and hopefully to bring in a manager to lead us going into the new stadium next year. And also, what do we have, like 12 guys under contract? So we're essentially going to be seeing 50% of a new squad next year, which is going to make the summer transfer season extremely busy. And I'm sure you guys, from a podcasting perspective, are going to have your hands full this summer in a good way. But I hope he's given a shot. If it was between Thelwell and Dyche, I'm taking Thelwell 100%. I think Dyche, like I said, 2 years, did a great job keeping us up. I'm thankful for that. But this year, for me, kind of almost erases the 2 years that he did a good job just with the way that he's gone out.
I just don't know how we've done any of this without a CEO. Like,
there it is.
I just, I thought we needed a CEO to fire the manager.
But yeah, thank you guys for letting me pop up. I know you're not going to be on for too long, so I'll take a step back. I know there's some other people that want to speak, but
thanks, Nick.
Hope you guys are well. Really good start with the podcast. Enjoying it so far.
Thanks, Nick.
Good hearing you, brother.
Yeah, good to hear from you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next up, we have NorCalToffee has requested to speak. Let's bring him up.
What's up? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, a great result today. Well, not great result, but a result today, a win. So I do have to make sure that I remind Sean that we're going to Europe before I do anything else. I got to start there.
Oh my God, dude. Come on.
No, honestly, guys, we could have lost 5-0 today, and today would have been a reason to celebrate. I mean, I think that Dyche leaving is the first domino that needs to fall for this club to get to where it needs to go. I personally had PTSD visions of the Lampard January window where we let him go on like the 26th, 27th of the month or whatever it was and had no time to and try to scramble for a couple of days to get a few guys in and we couldn't do it. So the squad's definitely a couple pieces away, I think, from, being where I would comfortably say that, we're going to be able to get to the end of the season comfortably out of the relegation zone. So I think too, to, kind of tying back to your guys' points on the pods in terms of PSR restrictions and where we're at, that Beto being one of our really only keys to being able to bring a guy in if we sell to free up some flexibility, that's probably gone and out the window with potentially a new manager in Broja. God only knows what's going on with him now. So I think Beto has to stay, which means we don't really have much flexibility other than maybe a loan if we're terminating Broja's loan. So I think that that's a big piece that we have to that's going to be looked at here. But I also feel like we're on January 9th, we've actually got some time to peruse around and see what's out there in the market. And more than anything else, I don't think Thelwell is going to be doing his job with two hands tied behind his back, because he doesn't have to try to convince somebody to come in with no confidence that the manager is going to be able to play him. We had Danjuma, Jake O'Brien didn't really play at all under Dyche. So I think that, to Nick's point a little bit, I wholeheartedly believe that Thelwell should have an opportunity to do the job. And, because he's been doing his job with two hands tied behind his back. So now that he doesn't have to try to convince guys to come with the prerequisite that, hey, you know what, I want to get you in, but the manager may not play you, so we're kind of taking a crapshoot here. I think that's out the window. I'd love to see him have an opportunity to show what he can do with the full backing of a club that's been a little bit more recapitalized, and not shackled down financially as much as we have been. Dyche, I'll give him credit. It's kind of already been echoed, but he did exactly what was asked of him. We never expected him to be a world beater. We never expected him to get us to Europe, for lack of a better term. His job was to come in, keep the ship afloat, and get us to Bramley-Bourne and still be in the Premier League and not lose out on that PL revenue. So he did his job. It kind of went sour this season. He was stubborn, to the point of a couple of the other pods. The underlying metrics really weren't very good compared to where they were last year. But I mean, the guy did his job. He did what was asked of him. Nothing more, nothing less. Thanks for what you did. See you later. And we got to keep it pushing. So I'll pause there.
Aaron, your thoughts on the potential appointment of David Moyes?
Yeah, kind of what everybody else has echoed. I mean, one thing that I will say that's an interesting caveat to that is if the rumors are to be believed, Lee Carsley's going to be coming in potentially as an assistant manager, which I think might sort out right back because James Gardner played from there for the Euros, the U21s, and played really well there. And I know a lot of us on the Discord have kind of been pushing for that to see that a little bit more. So that could be another way to sort one of the positions of need. That's really the only piece of the Moises appointment that potentially excites me. I'm kind of indifferent. I don't really care who you get in. If you get us to January or get us to June and we're still in the Premier League, I really don't care who you bring in. But I want to see, ultimately, I want Thelwell to be the guy to make the decision. I have enough trust in him with, what he's managed to put together with, how the constraints that he's had. I'd love to give him an opportunity to put something together of his own accord, like we mentioned Roma doing with their DOF. Whoever that may be, if Thelwell determines that Moyes is the guy, great, but I'm not that excited or compelled one way or another.
I was talking to the guys via text before we hopped on here, and I said I almost wish there was a little more time for speculation about the new manager, because I think we could do some interesting cases on other options that may be brought in. But I think the necessity right now is to try to move quickly, get someone in to stabilize the club. As soon as rumors to be believed, Moyes could be appointed as soon as tomorrow, maybe this weekend. We'll have to see. But you get him in on a 6-month deal. I mean, even if it's an 18-month deal and you have to let go of him at the end of the year, we're not, paying managers to leave is hopefully no longer something that we have to be concerned about putting us over the financial brink. So we'll have to see. But I agree with you, Aaron, that I think Carsley as an assistant would be quite interesting. Sean and Ryan, any thoughts on Ryan, jump in, because you wanted to talk a little bit about potentially Fonseca, who was another name that had been floated out and is still kind of lingering around in the betting odds, at least.
Yeah, I've been a little critical of some people's reporting about time at Roma. I mean, we had Jose being floated around, but as we talked about on the pod, I mean, Jose, when he left, was very upset with Friedkins. They at least flew to, tell him he was out in person and showed some good things, but I think they did the same thing with Fonseca, I believe. They just kind of let him go. But the thing with Jose is Jose literally, when he went out, he basically said that Friedkins knew nothing about football. So that didn't really end all that acrimoniously. Of course, it's Jose, so what do you expect? But I think Fonseca's a little bit different. I mean, he was really brought in when Jim Pilato was the owner, and brought in under Petraschi, the old sporting director, who they ousted eventually. Pilato ousted before he left. He had some issues with him, and so you knew that was the guy that brought in Fonseca. But if you read the statement, like the official statement the Friedkins made, it was very complimentary on both sides. Fonseca said the same thing. So I don't think it was one of those situations where it necessarily was broken. I think he associated him more with the previous sporting director, like Monchi, and some of the business that they did, and just kind of wanted a clean start. And honestly, you've got to give the sporting director the authority to hire someone. And if you remember, they brought in Thiago Pinto, who's now the sporting director at Bournemouth, in to make that decision. So, that was already done. His contract was up. So I don't know if that's not worth going to. I like Fonseca. I think he's been a pretty good manager across the board. And Roma wasn't the best situation to inherit. So I'm kind of curious curious if it would be hard to appoint him very quickly. I think maybe, but you never know. But yeah, for me, Moyes for anything more than 6 months doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there are PSR concerns there. But if you notice that the Friedkins played hardball with Dyche, it didn't sound like they were going to give him even his entire rest of his contract, because I think they felt like he packed it in a little bit. And I mean, maybe they're right. It's hard to speculate on that. But I think that's a different wrinkle too, because a lot of people talk that he had some sort of crazy buyout. I'm no lawyer. Maybe there's some lawyers on the line here that can talk about that, but I don't see how that's physically possible. I mean, you can't get paid out more than what your contract total is, especially in the last year, or else you'd literally be forced to stay on the job, or you just let him go into gardening leave and let it run out. So I think that was all very confusing. But yeah, I don't love the idea about Moyes, but I'm sorry, Sean almost felt like he was going out of his way to sabotage the team. So I think anyone at this point's an upgrade. And Moyes has worked with lots of different types of players, even big players. So perhaps recruitment can work under him. We shall see.
Yeah, and I wonder if we'll find out more about sort of the last few weeks Sean Dyche was at Everton, because it seems a little uncharacteristic of him to well, on the pitch we know that he likes to pack it in defensively speaking, but pack it in professionally I think is a whole different animal entirely.
Well, yeah, but I think we also knew that the second that they were close to Friedkins, when they looked into this, we knew they weren't going to keep Dyche. I mean, we said that from day one. I thought it would happen very quickly, but as a guess, I mean, no inside dope or anything. And I really think when push came to shove and when they got into the window, they're going to realize how dysfunctional it should be. And their viewpoint of football is the typical modern football structure where a sporting director sits over top, both the manager to some extent, the manager has influence, and the recruitment side, and operates and owns and is accountable for all of the football. So the second you see that, well, this director of football can't even fire the manager, the manager, Dyche has literally come out and said that he won't play guys that he didn't fully support in the transfer market. Like the way he said it in the quote was you got to at least give him a shot, because you don't know the market. And I don't know, you just could tell it's a guy that I really don't think can operate in that modern structure unless he changes a lot. My guess is that the Friedkins, when they came in, they figured that out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I do wonder if that was kind of the impetus for his approach towards the end, where he did kind of mail it in, is that the Friedkins expressed intent to empower Thelwell to make more of the decisions, and Sean Dyche felt like he was being frozen out a little bit. And kind of saw the writing on the wall, and for that reason just said, this is the end of the road for me.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see the reporting that came out afterwards. Obviously, Paul Joyce, who's been fairly silent on Everton matters since he was kind of ignored by the club recently. I'm sure the Friedkins will be a little different in terms of granting people access, but we shall see. But yeah, I'd be kind of curious. I want to hear some of the other listeners' takes in terms of what their thoughts are on Moyes. I think universally, Dyche had objectively proven that he had not done a very good job, and also kind of how good do we think this team is, and where do we need to improve? I mean, we identified needs on the pod, but I'd like to hear some listeners' idea of whether they think we got it right or not. We're going to do a post-match after this and release a pod, I think. We have the document up and running, but I think for me, it was so glaring today that we need wingbacks. And again, it's hard to judge today in terms of a reflection of need. I'm glad we went to a formation, but that formation, the purpose of it is to take Mikalenko off the pitch, basically. And so we didn't see that today. But I don't think too many things should be made of the formation today. Like I think Peterborough, we'll talk about them in the next pod, but they were open. They could have been taken today, but when you really haven't had much chance to do kind of in-ball rotations and really work on things, which isn't Dyche's thing anyway, not entirely surprised we looked a little sluggish and slow. You know what I mean? But I think today, if you have improvements in kind of another attacking position that can kind of play in there, wing back, full back for sure on the left side, I think this team looks very different. Maybe someone else in the midfield, but I think we have the needs right. I think it'd be very interesting to see if they hire a manager who is not back three, though, because I do think the personnel really lends itself to that. If you go back four, it's a thought to play Garner at right back. I liked him in the Dyche scheme playing right back. I don't know if in a different scheme that really works, but certainly you got to replace a left back. I mean, Mikalenko just looks past it, in my opinion.
Do we think, let's just say, and kind of just what we know right now with David Moyes kind of being the manager. Do you think, given the current personnel, I mean, of course, back in the day with Everton, he was 4-1-4-1. With West Ham, he's kind of, had the idea of packing it in. And of course, they had the personnel, right, to be really effective on the counter. Ryan James, anybody that kind of comes up. Do you guys think that, especially too, you think of like Lindstrom or Njai on the counter, right? Those are two guys that, almost kind of untapped potential. We might not have the specific finisher, but definitely somebody like Beto who could hold the ball up, right, and kind of, start the attack. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts in regards to, kind of some of the schemes that he might play with our current personnel?
I think you need more options, by the way. I mean, you do. You got to have someone that can pass the ball and get the ball up the pitch with his feet. I don't know if we really have that.
I have some thoughts on it, but before I go, I just want to say that we do have a empty queue right now. So if anyone wants to jump on,
yeah, please,
and come up and speak, we'd love to have you up. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll get you right up here. I mean, I do think part of Moyes and part of what undid Dyche is that his teams typically, we talked about it a couple of pods ago, don't actually attack that quickly. They don't move that quickly in the counter. We talked about the counter-attacking stat that was kind of bogus, but I think we saw a lot of that so far this season. And I think hopefully David Moyes comes in and sees, maintains some of the defensive shape, whether he changes formation, but keeps sort of the foundation of the defensive structure that was built. Hopefully Jake O'Brien plays more. And I think, Ryan, you're right. We do need more options at wing back and even attacking in some ways. But more quickly moving back to front, I think, is something that the existing personnel have the capability to do. We just didn't really see it with the manager.
I know people aren't going to hear about it, but Corey can get up and down the pitch. That's not the issue. You need someone that can get up and down the pitch, can carry the ball, something that Dyche typically discouraged through the midfield if you're going to run a counter. You know what I mean? At times, it can really run and do damage and attract people. And we need more people that when they get on the ball, the defense respect and will back off and give us space to operate. You know what I mean? We just don't have enough of them. And I mean, I really think a dynamic attacking player, especially one that can play on the right, could make a massive difference. I'm very curious what a new manager will do with Dwight McNeil. I mean, I think in a back three with wingbacks, Dwight's got to be one. He's not necessarily rapid, but he can carry the ball a little bit and make passes from the back. I mean, we've got to do something to be able to attack from a direct standpoint. Personnel might be part of it, but yeah, we got an empty queue. I'd love to hear some other opinions. I mean, hearing myself talk isn't all that really freaking interesting. No offense, James and Sean. I'd like to hear you guys talk more than myself, but I'd like to hear some of our listeners too. We got some great names out there, by the way, too. It's definitely a cast of characters.
Mitch, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah,
we can.
Sorry,
crystal clear.
I'm in the car, so just heading home from the gym, but figured with the empty cube. I just have a few thoughts really quickly. I think we don't even have to reinvent the wheel as far as formation goes in order to see an improvement with this team. I think the negativity coming from Dyche's stale ideas, his system, he's had a long tenure compared to kind of several previous coaches. And so even just his ideas being implanted on this team, I think you can roll out similar formations, similar roles for the different players, but give them different tactical instructions, take a different approach to the game. And we can see the team that with, worse personnel on the whole last year was creating better chances and on a much higher trajectory in the table without the points deduction. So I'm optimistic simply for that reason. And if David Moyes is that guy, at least for the next 6 months, hard to be upset about it if it means just some better ideas about how to utilize these players that we have, because we know that these players just from last year when we had a objectively worse squad, maybe save for some of the players who have gotten a year older and a year less effective, we know that this team can perform better. So I'm optimistic for those reasons. It's really a delight to see that this has happened, and timing that makes sense for the window and to be able to leverage that a little bit, possibly, financial constraints aside, but just really excited to see some new ideas on the pitch. I think everybody's eyes are pretty glazed over from the last year of football.
I think
those are great. Those are great points, Mitch. I mean, the one thing to think about, it's not like Dyche generated a lot of that from design. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not like he was great, elaborate design with the ball. What about set pieces? I mean, we've talked on the pod. It's probably time to refresh things, especially off corners. If you're going to rapid counter, you may not get the biggest chances in the world, but you probably draw some corners, and we've been woefully ineffective from them. I mean, Mitch, right? That's a massive difference. They don't know our corner routines. I mean, this is part of the reason why you can get a new manager bump. I mean, unless an old manager is running the same routines. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, but you got to admit, you would think we've got to upgrade in a position or two, correct? Don't you think?
And if you want to talk about stale ideas, I mean, Tarkowski at the back post all year last year was, a ripper. And this year the teams have figured it out. And so there's one more stale Dyche idea that was, maybe helping us out last year. Credit to Dyche where credit's due, but it's certainly not coming off this year. I mean, hopefully the Freakins are forward thinkers enough that they can kind of take a play out of Arsenal's book and maybe even bring in a set piece specialist coach. I mean, that's been really effective for Arsenal this year when, that's really the furthest thing from what you'd expect a typical Arsenal team to be doing to score goals. If we can, imitate that, 10% and be more effective from corners and, maybe win some more corners by playing offense, then just one more promising way for us to dominate because the center backs, the strikers that we have, they can all put it in the back of the net on a corner.
Yeah, I think that's right, Mitch. And I mean, I think fresh ideas is kind of became the antithesis of what Sean Dyche embodied and implemented at the club. I'm just going to mute you real quick, so no offense, just for the background noise. But yeah, I mean, I think you go back to the beginning of the year, we did a lot of sort of preseason type episodes, and we talked about the expectations going into the season, and it was that the team would maybe gradually improve simply by the personnel being better, particularly in attacking areas. And the fact that we've regressed in nearly every department was the biggest indictment of Sean Dyche that was there. And I think most of the football department at Everton and hopefully the leadership saw that and just saw the writing on the wall. I mean, the squad assessment was about as damning as it gets when it comes to just how completely inept Everton had become over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, James. And Mitch kind of brings up some really good points of just the team has gotten stale, right? I mean, you think of especially a few certain individuals. It'll be interesting, right? Because also too, the new manager coming in, they won't have their favorites like Dyche did with guys like McNeil and Tarkowski, and so it'll be interesting to see kind of what their roles are, whether they're in the lineup or in the reserves. So yeah, just kind of a lot to kind of really unpack and think about, especially as we go forward. I think for me, I'm just excited to just see a little bit of revitalization within the squad and kind of hopefully see kind of our talented players really play to their strengths.
Do you remember what that was like when we used to buy players and stuff?
That played their position that they were bought for. Yeah,
it's like a
or played at all. After watching John O'Brien tonight, can you imagine not playing that guy? I mean, I'm sorry, there just aren't guys that are built like that with his athleticism. You wanted to find ways to get him
John
in.
O'Brien?
Classic.
He was a left midfielder for the U.S. national team in the 2002 World Cup. He was fantastic. He played for Ajax. You've seen him. I did it again, didn't I? Wow.
I've seen John O'Brien. I've seen Jack O'Brien, and we saw Jake O'Brien today. So
I don't know why I don't want to call him Jake, I just don't want
it. It's better than Jordan Sanchez. So, I mean, we're making
when I was thinking of Jordan, unbelievable, isn't it? It's just I can't help it. This is why I don't do these things, by the way. This is why I've got to read off cards and do all my research. I know my value to the pod here, folks. I know. But yeah, I mean, you watched Jake Giacomondo O'Brien today. It's just unbelievable to think about a guy that eventually took over and played almost every match in France on a team much better than Everton's, can't find his way, especially when the center back pairing just wasn't doing well. I mean, it's just disappointing, and then Njai looked a lot more dangerous, I thought, down the middle a little bit today. And that's in a formation that was new and not particularly well created. So I don't know. It's just a shame that, it was what it was.
Let's talk about Armstrong too. I mean, look at that guy coming on the pitch. You'd almost think Dyche was resigned on his way out just because he played a 17-year-old in a match. But to see him come on today and thread a through pass like that, how many times have we been calling out for that on offense in the last couple of years? And nobody can pick that pass. 17-year-old comes on the field and boom, there's his, I know you love assists, Ryan, but I mean, can't deny the value of that pass for our offense.
Yeah, it's amazing. 17-year-olds to be able to step in there. And I thought he looked a little more adept physically than I would have expected. A long ways to go there, but what a great opportunity for that kid. And he clearly has talent. Imagine also investing in the youth. That's the thing. I mean, that doesn't count for PSR. I mean, you can invest in the academy and make serious investments there, maybe not purely on player acquisition, but to just attract better talent. It's a crowded ecosphere and space in that area, but you can attract from all over the place. Everton's a bigger brand than that. You know what I mean, Mitch?
No, absolutely. It'd be nice to see that starting to come through again when it's been so many years of, nobody really emerging. We had Gordon, that lasted a long time. It was really nice to see at least it probably made up a year or two's worth of PSR blemishes. But no, it'd be really cool to see the Friedkins investing there and for us to attract some more youth and give them enough opportunities that the most promising ones don't go off to City or Chelsea. That's just disappointing whenever that happens. We should be bringing those kids through. So I'd really like to see that. It would be nice to see more homegrown talent. I'm not from Liverpool or anything, we're sitting here in the USA, but it would still be really cool to see more of that going on at the club, especially when we've had success with in the past. Maybe Armstrong had his Tom Davis moment on, in one of his first couple of games here.
Oh, don't do that to him, man. Don't do that to him.
Don't put that on him.
He's probably more
Oh my God.
than that.
He's going to be on a skateboard in the city center now. Come on, man.
Yeah.
What's tough to process is just how these guys will come on and really take hold of their debut and have moments like that, and then they kind of get, intimidated, wigged out with the big league and regress. You'd love to see these guys go from strength to strength, and I hope to see that from Armstrong, especially with our lack of depth in the winger department. But if he can continue to pick passes like that and feed guys like NJ, come on, that's a way different offense. And you talked about putting teams on their heels. We can do that if we have passers as well as runners up in the front, instead of this negative hope for a chance to be created kind of tactical knot and setup. So I'm excited by that. I'm excited by his not debut, but his well played match today, and excited to see what else could come out of the academy, especially in the next 5 years.
Thanks, Mitch. Really appreciate the sentiment. Lee, thanks for joining. Floor is yours. What are your thoughts on Dyche, Moyes? Just kind of any other thoughts you might have?
Well, I was born actually in Everton, in Liverpool. I'm 51. I've supported Everton my whole life. I'm delighted that Moyes is coming back. It's a very sensible appointment. I think if we'd have got a foreign manager or we'd have got Potter, it'd have been a 50-50 on whether we stayed up or not. But I reckon we got a 90% chance of staying up with Moyes in charge. What he does is he gets players who'll run through brick walls for him. And he knows he's got a great eye for buying players. He doesn't have to spend a lot of money. He's going to take one look at our fullbacks and think, right, I'm going to get myself some new fullbacks. And he won't have to spend the earth. He's probably got a short list of players in his head as we speak. And the West Ham fans, they don't want us to get Moyes. They wanted us to get Mourinho. And because they thought we'd go down if we got Mourinho. I thought if we got Mourinho, it would be an absolute disaster. But I've been wanting Dyche and Thelwell fired for about 3 months.
Well, why would you think Jose would be a disaster in terms of in the short term? And do you really want David Moyes coming in and making the recruitment decisions?
Well, if you look at who David Moyes bought and you look who Mourinho bought when he was at United, he did the Sanchez swap. He bought Mkhitaryan for £37 million. He bought Lindelof for £31 million. Paul Pogba for £89 million. I could go on and on and on about his signings. He spent £52 million on Fred. It would have been a disaster. Moyes would never waste money like that. He just wouldn't. It's just not in him.
Didn't he do that at West Ham, though?
What, sorry?
Didn't he do that at West Ham, though?
He did spend a lot of money in one window at West Ham, but it's difficult to judge. Given the toxic fan base at West Ham, and given the fact that the stadium's not right and it's so far from the fans and all the things that go on with that club, it's very hard to judge him on whether he wasted the money or not, because West Ham is an absolute basket. If people think we're a basket case of a club, West Ham are completely a different level. Why they hounded him out in the first place after he won them a European trophy? Like, what are the chances that Graham Potter is going to win a European trophy at West Ham? I would say near 0%. I can't see it. Can you see him winning anything in Europe with West Ham? I can't.
It'd be tough. It'd be tough. I think United is a basket case too. Thinking Jose's defense a little bit. But yeah, I think Jose's recent experience at Roma with the Friedkins, I don't think Jose was ever going to be an option. I'm sure you've heard us talk about that a little bit.
Do you know what Potter's win percentage is?
Which club?
Well, his overall win percentage is 31%, and we fired Dyche today, and his win percentage was 31%. So I don't understand. I didn't understand the clamour for Potter. I was praying we didn't get him.
Well, I think you look at the progression of Brighton, you look at what he did while fighting relegation. I'm sure that's probably why some people thought about it. I mean, he turned Neil Maupay into a 10-goal scorer.
Yeah, which was a miracle.
I thought you might say that, Lee. That's why I brought it up. No, I mean, my only concern about that is I think if you give David Moyes 6 months and just say, look, just focus on the football, get us to stay up. I think at this point, I think it's a little bit difficult for any manager to come in and really jump in and own recruitment. For me personally, I don't think there's an issue with Kevin Thelwell, and I don't think there's an issue with the recruitment side. We've just spent almost no money. And I would point to all the permanent acquisitions that they've made. They haven't bought many guys permanently, and I think most of them have been just fine, if not quite good. I just think you have a situation where the manager influence is problematic. That's the question, though. Can David Moyes work with targets that maybe have been identified already? Can he work well with the sporting director?
I know what David Moyes is like, and when he's in negotiations with TFG tomorrow, he will say, "I want final say on."
Then he won't get hired. Then he won't get hired.
Then he won't get hired.
That's what he'll be saying tomorrow.
He won't get hired. Then I can tell you that right now.
Okay?
They won't do that. No, they won't.
We're talking about a guy who got Tim Cahill for $1.5 million.
Right, but they won't do that. They didn't let Jose do that at Roma. Like, you know what I mean? They're not going to operate that. No modern club does that anymore, man. That's very, very rare. I'm not saying that David Moyes doesn't have a great eye for talent. I'm not saying he won't contribute. I mean, ultimately what happens is the identification and the guys have already been picked already now. It's just a matter of going through the final group to say, all right, David, you're the new guy now. You know the needs of the club. I mean, that's the goal. The manager has got to be the first team needs for sure. I think we agree on that universally. Now, how much leverage they have or how much authority they have to say, okay, here are the 4 or 5 guys you like. Here's the order you like them. I don't like number 2. I don't like number 4. How much authority he has to do that, I don't know. But he has worked some with the sporting director.
I think he will get final say.
I can tell you he won't.
Well, when he managed us back in the day, you know, the sign.
Yeah, but it's different now, though, Lee. It's very different now.
You've got. Remember when he bought Silva and Distan from Portsmouth for $6 million?
Yeah. I hear you. No, Lee, I'm not saying he didn't do a great job in that era very well. And maybe single-handedly, he could be a great sporting director one day, if that's what he wanted to do. Well, I think at this point, he's probably past it.
And I live near Liverpool. I moved from Liverpool when I was 10. But I lived near Liverpool, and the latest rumours is that he's going to bring Carsley in with him before next week as his number 2. Don't know.
Yeah, what do you think about that? How do you think the job Lee did with the youth team?
Well, me personally, I did want Carsley before he got the England job, the main England job. But then when he played, I think they were playing against Greece, and he played no striker up top. Now, can you imagine if an Everton manager played no striker at Goodison? Can you imagine what the fans would be like?
They would be confused.
I'm very wary about giving the job to Carsley because you can't be England manager and have no striker up front. It's just not. We ended up losing the game, I think 2-1 to Greece.
Well, we talk about identity, right, Lee? I mean, Everton number 9.
Exactly. You know, you can't. He's not going to get away with that at Everton. They'd be murder if he put a team out with no striker. But the way things are looking, we may have. I think it looks to me. I'm a big NFL fan, and the Green Bay Packers last week, Christian Watson, the wide receiver, had no one near him, and he fell, and Broja's injury looked exactly the same, like identical. If you look up on YouTube and you see Christian Watson fall over, he torn his ACL, and I think Broja's torn his ACL.
Stinks for him, right? Just what a shame.
Identical.
It's so unlucky for him. You really feel for him after that. Really, you go through a rehab for an injury like that once, you come back, you get a knock.
And then that happens.
And then you come on for 5 minutes and you potentially re-injure the ACL. I mean, it's the same leg. It looked really bad. The stretcher's never good. You just feel for him.
I don't think we should have signed him in the first place, given the fact that he was going to be out for the first 4 months.
Well, keep in mind, we at least weren't paying for him when that's the case. And I will say this, I think most likely if the deal is still we don't pay for him when he's injured, I would think they probably send him back and would free up a loan space for us. I'm speculating here.
That's what we're all. That's what we're all hoping. All the Evertonians who live in Liverpool or near Liverpool, we're hoping that we can send them back because we're hoping it terminates the loan, but we don't know for sure.
I bet it probably would.
I'd like Moyes to have a loan space, you know.
I think a loan space is a good use for a manager. I think obviously foreign loans are still open. We can still bring people in that way. But I think that's finally. I mean, especially if you got a guy that you think is going to be a shorter term appointment. Loan's perfectly reasonable.
I feel for the lad, but I don't think we should have signed him after his Fulham spell, where he only played it. Fulham paid £4 million loan fee last January for him. He only played 8 times and didn't score, so I don't quite see what Thelwell and Dyche thought they were getting.
Well, the structure, I think, was smart. You know,
I wouldn't have gone anywhere near him, but what do I know? I'm just a fan.
Well, we appreciate it, Lee, very much. Thanks for jumping in here.
You're welcome. You look after yourselves, you American Blue Boys.
Thanks, Lee. You have a good one. Appreciate you coming
All
up.
right, nice one. Thanks for letting me on.
Of course. Cheers.
Of course. Yeah. Appreciate your opinions.
All right, folks. We are back for our instant reaction to Everton 2, Peterborough United 0 in the FA Cup. Everton into the next round. And in the second part of this podcast episode, we're going to get into the match, do kind of a truncated version of a typical post-match on the show. Let's get into it. We're going to go to Sean for our choice of instant match reaction of the day.
Thanks, James, and no better comment to start with than a good friend of the Discord as well as the pod, Kevin Dyer at Nebula 1979. Competent given the lack of minutes in some, change of formation, style, good to see passing on the deck, right side impressed, Armstrong high potential, O'Brien composed, Patterson a natural wingback, played to Beto's strengths, gutted for Broja, cool to see Baines, Seamus double act. A lot there, and pretty much, Kevin, I think, hits the nail on the head. Just obviously for us, good things to see, and of course we'll get into it, but want to kind of transition to the score predictions for this week. Obviously, really fun to see kind of some of the change predictions with certain news that happened this morning. But a lot of correct predictions still. Sunwave Cat, Camliza 13, Tony Two Toes, Bad Gumby, Hunter, Winfreaky 12. Just to let everyone know, I've made a Google Sheets doc that will basically kind of record everyone's correct score predictions, and want to give a special shout out to Sunwave Cat. He has 2 for 2 so far. So if you want to kind of get a good score prediction, you might want to copy his. So going into lineups, James, take it away.
Yeah, so of course, as we discussed in part 1, the big news of the day, of course, Sean Dyche sacked just a few hours before kickoff. Leighton Baines and Seamus Coleman given the reins for this one, which was a morale boost for the fan base, to say the least. And allegedly, the lineup that was put forth was the lineup that Sean Dyche selected. Baines alluded to this prior to kickoff, saying that Dyche picked the formation. And of course, Baines found out this morning that he was going to be running the show, so he didn't really have much time to really even be involved in the trainings prior to the game or to set anything up. So I think fair to say that this was what Dyche had selected, and he does change formation, which is something we've been calling out for a long time. And he's shown a willingness to do this in cup matches and maybe lower stakes games in his tenure at Everton so far. That said, it was still, regardless of him being gone, amazing to see some of the faces who we've been calling out for appear in the lineup. And the change of formation is, of course, to basically a 3-4-3. We see James Tarkowski, Decore, Broja, Young, Lindstrom, and Pickford all drop to the bench. We see Michael Keane come in to play in the middle of a back three between Jake O'Brien and Branthwaite, which was probably the single change that I was most excited about in seeing that shift to a back three with those two guys on either side, because their athleticism and ability to be aggressive I thought would be really important in a nice change of pace from what we've seen, the passivity of our center backs so far this season. Patterson and Mikalenko at wing back, of course. We see Harrison, Armstrong, Beto, and Njai leading the line, and then Ghana and Mangala kind of holding down the middle of the pitch in a two-man midfield. Radical change for Everton and Peterborough United. Interesting case. Of course, the opposition is worth mentioning. They didn't do a whole lot noteworthy today. But Ryan, tell us a little bit about who Everton faced on the day.
Well, it's not the Peterborough Petes, so this is not a hockey team for those that don't really pay attention to English football. They're in League One. They've lost 5 in a row. They're not playing particularly well right now. However, they did just switch formations to the 3-4-1-2, so I don't think that was a surprise necessarily that we saw that. Interesting, they're 16th in expected points in their league, so not quite as bad. What's really interesting is, though, they're third in the league in possession. So they're managed by Darren Ferguson, the man of virtue, Sir Alex's son. His father had nothing really to do with his success. It's not really an interesting story, as we'll find out. So leading into the matchups, because of his general disdain for his position in football due to his dad, you knew there was no chance that we were going to see an Ashley Young and Tyler Young matchup when we get into key matchups. All right, I'm totally joking at this point, but that's another story. We'll get into that later. To me, I think the key matchups were that, same formation in essence in terms of a back seven versus us. How would we deal with that? It's not something you see all the time in the Premier League, and how we would do with the new formation. I think the point of the 3-4-2-1 is to get Michalink off the pitch in many ways, but he was out there in a left wing-back position, not necessarily the best position for him. So I think that's what was interesting for me to see how Patterson at wing-back and how Jake O'Brien would react as the right side of a three-back pairing. I mean, we've been calling for him to play. I think that's a good role for him. And to me, Michael Keane coming in is a little bit strange, but he in theory could sit deeper and free up Branthwaite and O'Brien to be more active. And that's something we've talked a lot about in the pod, in the defensive zone, being more active, winning more balls. I wouldn't say it necessarily played out that way, but I thought it was really interesting. So to me, that was the key matchup, just to see how we would do and how our wing play would be.
Yeah, and just on a day of radical change across the board. The manager's gone. We've got a totally different lineup and some new faces who we've been clamoring for some time. That said, I think the match started and took the wind out of the sails of the Goodison crowd a little bit with a slow start, but things really started to heat up around the 23rd minute. This was when Mangala hits that full volley and an absolute rocket shot, great technique on it, and it just hits the corner, the post, the intersection of the two posts. It was a really good hit, but that was really the only exciting thing that happened for a lot of the half. About 11 minutes later, Peterborough had that break after we had a corner, which was honestly terrifying. Mikalenko slides in and makes a last-ditch block that gives them a corner. And they almost score on that corner, as a matter of fact. Beto's on the near post, and he kind of whiffs on the clearance. It deflects. It's chaos in the box. And then O'Brien ends up getting the butt block, as it's been dubbed in the Discord. And then a few minutes after that, Branthwaite plays a really good ball to Beto. He kind of gets a header on it, but it's a little bit of a tough angle. He can't really get much momentum on it. But then just a couple minutes later, Beto is back, and he finally puts us in the lead with a really good goal.
I love the composure on this play, too. I mean, it just goes to show you, when he has time, I mean, he obviously is fine technically. It's just Beto's trying to do things very quickly, but I think the fact that he had the composure to make a really solid first step and the composure to play around the keeper when he was coming out, and the slot is not that easy as a finish to do that quickly. I mean, hitting it across your body like that, doing it accurately in the side net is not that much of a layup. He made it look very easy, though, to be perfectly honest. And look, I mean, we weren't aggressively attacking down the middle. We were being a little bit more cautious with the ball, and I think that's natural when you're playing a new formation and there's not a lot of design. We'll get into how much preparation they had, but I think this was really well taken.
Yeah, it reminded me pretty much of that Southampton goal that was disallowed, where I think he just did a really good job of taking on the keeper, to your point, Ryan. And yeah, it was just really good to see for a player that I think just, we've been clamoring for time on the pitch. And I think just took that ball really well. A great pass by Armstrong. And so, yeah, it was just good to see an open play goal. We haven't seen many of those recently.
Yeah, and that was, I think, our third shot on target or fourth shot on target of the half, which was also great to see. We had the folks in the Discord celebrating that every single time. I just want to emphasize, it is a phenomenal pass from Harrison. So much so that I actually was convinced that Beto was at least a couple yards offside when he received it. And the fact that he didn't really celebrate either made me think that he knew he was offside. Maybe he just really didn't want to be here. He would have preferred to be in Turin, where he was just a few days ago, but called back and trained, and of course gets the goal, which really made all the difference and effectively takes us through to the end of the first half. Great to get the lead just going into the break. I think Goodison was starting to feel a little bit nervous.
Yeah, it's interesting that in that formation, when they're packed in that deep, you got to have a pass to kind of unlock what they're doing. And we had three center backs, and just the quality wasn't there. There were several times where it was open in the half space. And, fundamentally, when you start to put numbers in front there, someone's got to fill in those gaps. And so it's risky to take some of those center backs and move them forward. It is nice, though, Branthwaite and Jake O'Brien both have recovery pace, which is something that's useful. I mean, not too many guys of their size have the ability to get up and down the pitch at their heights. But that kind of puts us into the first half numbers, and I think they were fairly indicative of how the play went.
Yeah, so something we haven't seen really at all this season from Everton, 60% possession in the first half. And I mean, of course, given the opposition, not a huge surprise, but a .64 expected goals tally to Peterborough having just .19. We, of course, had 7 shots, 4 on target. I think 5 of our 7 shots were outside of the box, though, which is, a little bit concerning, but obviously out past them. We had 2 corners to their 1. Nothing overwhelming, but comforting that Everton were able to dominate the ball and create a goal from open play, regardless of the opposition, just because we've seen so little of it so far this season. We'll keep it rolling into the second half. I mean, I think maybe a little less action in terms of opportunities on target, but there was the customary Ghana launched shot that I just wanted to briefly mention. Armstrong played Patterson in down the right side, and Patterson nutmegs the defender, drives across the end line, lays it off, and Ghana comes in and just launches it almost out of Goodison Park. It was the classic Ghana shot, but maybe he does score bangers, as we know.
Well, it's funny too to see him on set pieces today because he was taking corners. I thought that was pretty fascinating. I mean, he wasn't bad on it. He was floating them up, and we had a couple different routines too. He was trying to play those low balls to Mangala. One got blocked out for a corner, which was interesting. I mean, it was fairly uneventful second half. We let them have the ball a lot more, and it looked like we tightened up a little bit. We got a little more narrow, and I think that was the right thing to do. I think some of the subs maybe changed the game slightly, should I say? I mean, not necessarily in the negative. The first one I was a little surprised. My guess is when he made the first series of sub, Jack coming on, no surprise, no big deal. We'll talk about Armstrong's performance here in a second. My guess is Beto probably doesn't come off if he's not on a yellow, because he got a stupid yellow for kicking the ball away.
Right.
To me, maybe that would have been the only game changer. It just didn't look like they were going to score. And look, we weren't fluid either, but it is what it is. And then in the 73rd minute, the sub we were all waiting for, Ashley Young comes on. So, but before we get to that whole debacle, pretty terrible moment, I think, in my opinion, in the 81st minute, when it's kind of a non-contact injury a little bit here. I mean, Broja gets a ball put to him into space on the left side. He tracks it down. He was very cavalier about it, by the way. It was I thought kind of strange. He was really not moving very well, I think, when he came on, and I'm not so sure he even wanted to be out there. It was kind of strange. But, I mean, he goes down, there's a tackle, and kind of on the follow-through, it looks like he kind of stumbles on top of the player or tries to avoid him, but it doesn't look like there's a twist or anything, so it looked like maybe the knee buckled. Definitely not good. Long stoppage of play, and he was stretchered off. A lot of impacts on this one, but you got to feel for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely awful, Brian. It's just, for a guy, I mean, you always will root for somebody that continues to kind of just come back from injury, and Broja's kind of a perfect example of somebody that's just unfortunately had quite the injury record in his career. But I think for Everton, right, has just he's been a good player to just, at least from a professional standpoint, just trying to kind of do his best for the club in a time where it's not easy to, and then especially something like this, it's just fortunately it seems like he did not go to the hospital from what Baines said, so I don't know, kind of take that as what you will. It seems like it's a lower leg injury. Of course, we'll kind of hear exactly what it is in the coming days. But yeah, you hope it's not anything season ending. But I think we'll get to kind of, if it is season ending, what that can mean for Everton.
I mean, never really. I mean, just because you don't go to the hospital doesn't mean. I mean, next day,
yeah, of course.
Up,
Just something to note.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for him to be down that long in a play that wasn't very obvious what happened, you tend to think the worst in situations like that.
100%, and I just really feel for the guy, a guy who I think was a long-term target for us, and we finally got the opportunity to bring him in and see what he could do. And he's rehabbing that injury for months and months and months. And you think about the toll that takes on you mentally to finally get back fit and able to play. He's finally getting in and around the fringes of the team. And then this happens. And of course, last match he had the self-inflicted injury, and then again, evidently fit to play, which was great, but it just continues to compound, and it really didn't look good. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that, because I think it has a lot of implications for Everton. I mean, if it's a season-ending injury, which of course we hope it's not, does this open the door to potentially sending him back to Chelsea and opening up a loan slot for Everton to move in January? Because I think that is a massive opportunity in bad circumstances for the club to improve in a different area.
Yeah, domestic loans spot. Obviously, we can bring in foreign loans, but it could be an opportunity. You'd love to get some bang for the buck. I think the thing is, too, if he's fine and he can stay, it could facilitate a sale of Beto. I'd prefer not to see that. I'd like to see what Beto can do with a different manager. I thought we saw some good signs today. I think that would be the preferred way to go. I think you could deal with Beto for another 6 months and get something out of him, honestly. But yeah, I mean, if Broja can stay, then maybe you facilitate the sale. But either way, something's got to give there. You can't keep that many center forwards, I think, on the first team. And the arrangement is we don't pay for him when he's injured. But so you got to figure if there's a significant injury at all, you would think they'd pull him back just to take care of him. I mean, they wouldn't want our physios to deal with them. And there's no benefit to them to have him here because we're not paying his salary when he's hurt anyway, it's hard to say there are a lot of opportunities out there on loan. I remember the last time that we had a loan in January in from another Premier League team. I mean, you can't ignore the impact El Ghazi had. I know he's near and dear to your heart, Sean. I know he's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, just one of that was one of the worst Januaries I think you can ask for in not only club history, but I think just football history in itself. So no further comment.
We'll continue to monitor that situation and see what happens because, again, out of bad circumstances, maybe there's a potential opportunity there. And agree with you, Ryan, that if it were between terminating a long-term injury Broja loan and keeping Beto or selling Beto, even if Broja's only out for a few weeks, I still think, given he's one of the only players that's going to be here end of season, that I still believe in Beto. And I know a lot of other people do too. And I think a new manager would give him a new lease on life at Everton initially. But we move on through the timeline. I think the last thing that we obviously need to talk about is in the 90th minute plus the 10 minutes of stoppage time. This came in the 6th minute of stoppage time. It's Jesper Lindstrom on the break. He draws the foul for the free kick. On the ensuing free kick, goes far post. Branthwaite draws a penalty. And Njai steps up and he buries it. It's the defender looked outraged, or maybe he just looked like he knew what he did and he was accepting punishment, but it is a blatant, not even remotely trying to play the ball, grabbing the guy by the neck and just dragging him to the ground. Almost comical.
I mean, earlier in the game, one point, he didn't even bother to go after a set piece because he was hogtied so badly. He just kind of turned and was like, really? Is that what we're doing? And I don't blame people for doing that. I mean, we've seen it in the Premier League. You basically let it go. This guy called nothing, by the way. I mean,
he let them get away with everything.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, on us too. I mean, we had some fouls. I'm like, oh my God, he didn't call anything. I didn't think he was going to call the foul when Njai got clobbered. That is a clear yellow, by the way. How does that dude not get a yellow for just taking him out? Njai's balance is incredible, by the way, the fact that he didn't totally go over. But yeah, this is unbelievable. By the way, this is how you take a penalty, folks. Oh yeah. Doesn't look at the ball. Does a little stutter step. I love it.
Just beautifully taken. I know there was a little bit of commentary in the Discord of, was that really a good pen? But I think he basically had the keeper make a decision, well before he took the pen. And yeah, I mean, great for Njai. I mean, just kind of well-deserved goal for him. Well-deserved win for the team, especially to your point, James, after an eventful day. But I think, guys, we need to transition to the real kind of just controversy of the day. And it wasn't the manager. It was another manager.
I can't read Marva's tweet without laughing hysterically, so I'm going to have to let someone else do it because this is so good.
I'll give it a go.
I'll do it. Yeah,
you go ahead, Sean. You take it.
Okay. All right. So Marva at Marva MSK says, and to your point, Ryan, and it'll be hard not to laugh, but I'm going to do my best. Shout out to the Peterborough manager for making a principled stance against father-son football nepotism. And then says, great work from Checks Notes, Darren Ferguson. So well done, Marva. That's, I think, we have a few more, and I think James, it's just the party with this one is alive and well.
Don't say this.
I'm going to do it. This next one is kind of brutal, but we're going to lean into it. Why not? On the day. Darren Ferguson not bringing on Ashley Young's son after all the coverage about it is probably the worst thing he's done since he assaulted his own wife. We got some great feedback on the soundboard.
I mean, in your defense, he was charged with assault, so it's not.
We're not speculating here, and obviously that's very serious. But God, it's a joke. You got to laugh, guys. Come on.
He changed his plea. Yeah, he pleaded guilty and everything to it. Anyway, I want to move on that one very quickly. That being said, he did have the audacity, I think, in the post-game presser to make this comment. One of their players had a pop of me, and that is bang out of order. Like, really? I mean, I'm sorry, man. After this goal, it's 2-0. Put him on. Like, I can't believe you wouldn't do that, man. Like, think about how miserable. I get it. I get it to some extent, but like, I don't know. I think it's a little ridiculous.
It would have been a great moment. It would have really been amazing. That said, Sir Alex Ferguson's son, I would expect him to be a total hard ass, so it doesn't exactly surprise me. But come on, lean into it. You have this opportunity to take your club to Goodison and have a really special moment in football history, and you're trying to push for a win down 2-0 when you barely had an opportunity the entire match. It's a joke.
The irony, though, of it is just unbelievable.
Nepotism at its finest, Ryan. So
it takes us into full time. Everton win, and I think it's a overall pretty solid performance. As you said, Ryan, we definitely let them have a lot more of the ball in the second half. So as a result, in the second half, the balance of play shifted a little bit. Peterborough finished with 53% possession. That said, they created absolutely nothing. 0.06 XG. That's like a Sean Dyche Everton performance.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, and the thing is, you got to remember, if you've not really trained this and you're not fluid, and we know how Sean Dyche teams look anyway when they have the ball a lot, it's not going to look pretty, and it definitely wasn't. We should have been a lot more aggressive at times, should have made, but a lot of times aggression is masked by preparation, having, like, there were so many times where we could have switched the ball quickly, opened them up. When they went side to side, gaps emerged, but we just didn't have a lot of that stuff scripted clearly, and that's okay, and I think the adjustments in the second half were we tightened up so that they didn't counter at all and sat back when we needed to was fine. We had the penalty in the second half and that was it. I'd also like to mention that for the whole game, our post-shot XG exceeded our XG for the first time, I feel like, in forever. And look, Peterborough only had one shot on target. That being said, I'm curious what you guys thought were about the formation itself, and does it make sense? I don't believe we played against a better team. We would have done very well, but maybe a little bit of practice and a change in personnel. I think we might have something here.
Yeah, I think to your point, Ryan, it'll be interesting because I think 3 at the back, as we've talked about in prior pods, does well for our personnel. I think the point would be, is it Tarkowski or Keane, right? If all things are kind of considered well. Interesting to see his omission from the bench today. Don't think we got too much clarification on why. But yeah, I think the 3 at the back would be good. It'd be interesting in regards to who would play those wingback spots, right? Of course, Patterson today did okay, had his moments, right? You could see, when he's on the front foot, right? He can be a threat. I think it's when you ask him to defend is where the questions kind of are concerning. But then to your point, I think trying to get Mykolenko off the pitch would be the benefit of why we'd go back 3. And yeah, to your point, let's see if we get Dwight or somebody else in that spot, or maybe another, depending on kind of January business, right? So yeah, just kind of interesting.
Yeah, Patterson today, I mean, he looked okay going forward. He had a couple really good moments going forward, but defensively, just like, it was kind of, it just showed his shortcomings as a player. I'll put it diplomatically.
James, how has he not improved his 1v1 technique, though? It's the exact same thing I watched at Rangers. It's too hunched over. His feet aren't quick enough, I don't think. I watched the same thing, and that was my concern. I did it on our old pod. I gave a whole assessment of it, and I was really concerned about that. And Mykolenko was just so terrible, too. It was really hard to watch at times. So for the fact that, and in Patterson's defense, he was a little tentative going forward, but everyone was. So I don't fault him for that. But you can make up for that by letting him be aggressive and maybe moving the defensive mid back that way. Obviously, it's nice to know that you've got a center back behind you too. And the setup looks very different when you have cover. You can be a little more aggressive, but I'm sorry. He was just getting beat to the line so easily.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to get this comment in from Lexel_Pricks, who said, wouldn't mind sticking with this formation moving forward. Allowed our creative players to stay closer to the goal, and the CBs could take some risks knowing they had cover. Would it work against Premier League teams, though? I think obviously a fair question, and maybe we'll find out, but I just imagine Dwight McNeil in for Mykolenko in a setup like that. And Mykolenko was not shy about getting forward today, for better or for worse. He didn't do much when he got forward, but positionally he was okay being aggressive and trying to push forward, but overlapping with Njai, who was happy to kind of cut inside. So I can just imagine you replaced Mykolenko in all those situations with Dwight McNeil, much better outcomes for Everton.
I don't think the structure is the issue, but when you see it, when our wingbacks would still get isolated 1v1, it's a problem. And actually, I would argue defensively, Ashley Young looked slow slow as can be as well, too. I mean, you still have to cover for those guys and defend better in a tandem. That's why we bring the wingers back so far. Well, you can't really do that when you're playing wingbacks. You either need a cover guy from your wide center back, or you've got to get one of the center mids over there a little bit. But those are the risks you take. But that's the thing. Like, if you want to score goals and get people up the pitch, you're going to have to defend 1v1 a little bit. And to me, when you're out wide like that, I mean, you cannot get beat that easily to the line. Like, back off a guy. Like, maybe you give up a cross, and that's fine. You could ping crosses into a bunch of 6'5" guys all game. Like, good luck with that. Pinging crosses into Jake, Tarkowski, and JB. I mean, good luck. You know, it's not going to go well for you. You'd want that, and that's when you can turn around, turn the thing the other way, and rapid counter. You know, but you can't do that if your wingers are playing all the way deeper. And even if we're playing 3-4-2-1, today might have been better to go 3-4-1-2, to be honest, if you had the right guy. They've got to stay high a little bit in order to do the transition and make themselves available. I still don't think we look great on the ball, though, to be perfectly honest. I mean, they move the ball around a lot, but it's just not steady. JB looks a little sloppy on the ball. I mean, it just doesn't look as steady. O'Brien looked great on the ball, though. I mean, his right foot is good. I mean, by the way, we'll get in the individual performances, but the talent there with that guy is so obvious. Very interesting to hear this, though. So the interview, Leighton Baines afterwards, big moment for him, right? And his interview was amazing. I mean, he acted like he's been doing this for years. Apparently found out this morning just when everybody else did. So think about that. I mean, he had to play. Tactics are already scripted. And I'm sure he wasn't involved necessarily in training. So he said they made a few adjustments. His quote was, "I've been coaching long enough. The people around me are experienced enough." I mean, couldn't have said more positive things. And then there's this great quote that Everton posted from their official Twitter account, which is lovely, I think.
Yeah, so Baines, he said, "It was a difficult day, but I think within all of that, there's definitely now got to be hope and optimism. That's something we've spoken about today. Things are changing. The football club, the ownership, the stadium. And what better way to usher in this new era than two of Everton's best players of the Premier League era leading the club out as interim head coaches. I mean, that was just surreal in a lot of ways to see those two, but just incredible. I mean, obviously, I think for myself personally, those were the fullbacks when I really started watching Everton regularly, and to see them managing, shouting from the touchline was just something really special that I'll always remember.
Wait, are you saying the fullback pairing is not the same type of thing we see today?
If we had fullbacks of half that quality, we'd be in a lot better league position. Are you kidding me?
I think also what's interesting, James, is, you know, we talk about the Freakin' group, right, about trying to kind of understand the club, right, and we've lauded them in regards to what they've done on social media and just, I think, just overall with kind of their overall vibe when it comes to the announcements and things like that. And I think this is just another example of them kind of really understanding the moment. And they could have they could put somebody like Paul Tate, they could have done a few different things, but I think understanding that, you know, this is kind of a low leverage match in the grand scheme of things, but to kind of put, you know, both Leighton and Seamus on the sideline for today, I think is a really nice touch.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting when they asked Leighton on some things afterwards. He transitioned talk about some of the individual players. Seamus said some stuff as well, too, you know, Seamus is just the most incredible spokesperson for a club. I mean, some of the things he said at the end was just absolutely lovely, dreamlike, playing training, and now I'm on the sideline with Bainesy, that type of stuff. It's so great. Leighton Baines, though, on Harrison Armstrong, I like this quote. "To see him getting this exposure to the first team is why we all go to work. It's brilliant to see that, and I thought his performance was really good today. It's a great moment for the football club, and I think it's fitting that the lineup was already picked, but clearly Baines has worked with this kid a bit before already, and I mean, you know, he has to feel pride to see, and he wasn't perfect today, I thought, but lovely pass, made a big difference, and he's got a pass in him. He's got a good touch in him, too. He's got some length. I mean, he's far from it. I don't want people to get too excited, but I believe he was named the Emirates FA Cup man of the match for today, right?
Yeah, that's right.
He was.
He was indeed. And look, I think we had some other very good performances which are worth mentioning, and we can talk about Armstrong in just a minute, but I mean, I want to start with Beto because a lot of talk about him on the last pod. We thought he might be as good as gone. He comes back, he returns to Goodison, he gets the goal. He had 12 touches in the box. He had the really composed finish and patience to take on the keeper. Maybe could have done a little better with the header, but it's a tough angle, I think, to really get a lot of power onto it. But he was 3 for 3 in shots on target. He was 5 for 7 in duels, and he drew a couple of fouls. He's a battler, and he battled. Emmanuel Fernandez was okay marking him, but Beto is just going to bully a lot of guys in the Premier League, much less League One opposition.
I would not want to play against that guy in a whole game. I mean, it just would be, he's unpredictable. He bodies guys. I mean, he really throws himself into it. Yeah, I thought he did really well today, as well as he could. I mean, the structure really wasn't there. It was borderline a pickup game the way we were set up. But and there were probably a couple times you could have been fed the ball a bit more. I do think he had 12 touches in the box, right? So, I mean, that's not nothing. Yeah, Emmanuel Fernandez did okay, though. I was actually kind of impressed with the guy. I mean, that's not an easy assignment.
Yeah, and then transitioning to other good performances, Jake O'Brien, obviously we touched on pure class today. 94 touches led the team, 14 passes into the final third. That also led the team. 4 for 11 long balls. Of course, not that great. 9 recoveries, that led the team. If talking about recoveries, 3 clearances also led the team. He made it look easy, Seamus said, and I would totally agree. I think for a guy that, we've been kind of clamoring to get more time in the pitch, he certainly did himself favors. If, let's just say, Sean was managing, but just, whoever's going to be managing this club in the coming days, really excited to, hopefully really see a lot of Jake O'Brien in the second half of the season.
Just crazy that we've had a talent like him on the bench this entire time.
I mean, you can't get anything out of this guy. I mean, never. Like, you never felt the need to change. Like, seriously, Dyche had this planned, so he was willing to change in a cup match. But you never thought to change the formation at all up to this point? Just, it's his own fault, right? I mean, he was acquired. He's a talent. You locked him out. I mean, Napoli asked for him this window. Napoli, they're better than us, FYI. Just pointing that out, despite their affection for Scott McTominay. Anyway, Idrissa Gana guy I thought was solid. I mean, you could tell him and Mangala was free to roam around and get on the ball a lot, so you saw that. So, I mean, Gana just held down the fort, man. I mean, 7 for 8 in duels won. 7 for 8, man. Think about that. His tackling is still incredible at this point. Like, he picks stuff clean that makes no sense. Like, that guy is not big, and he just finds a way to put his foot on the ball. It's incredible. 11 passes in the final third, 1 shot on target, which hopefully everyone's safe and okay as a result of that. If you have little kids, you got to be careful. Was taking corners, and I thought did adequately well on those. There were moments, so he was really clean on the ball. Not always. I'm not saying he could go back to his PSG days, but it just goes to show you he is capable more of getting on the ball and doing just fine. But I think the main man on the ball today was Mangala. I'm not sure if he can replicate this type of performance against top team under pressure, but I mean, really, he barely put a false foot forward.
Yeah, he barely broke a sweat. 83 touches on the day, 63 for 66 in passes. He had 3 shots, including that volley. I'm not going to get over it. That would have been goal of the season contender for sure. I mean,
just lovely.
Everything about it was sensational besides the fact that it didn't go in. He did have 2 other shots in addition to that one. And yeah, his main role was just to get on the ball. He lost some battles. He committed 3 fouls, but overall, I thought he just dominated the midfield in almost every respect. And him and Ghana are just, I think, a pretty good partnership. They complement each other in a lot of ways. Again, against better opposition, maybe they exploit the midfield a little bit better, but overall, nice to have a relatively comfortable and easy win for the Toffees on a day where things are shifting seismically at the club. I want to end our match sort of analysis, and we have a couple talking points after that, but I want to end with this comment on our Discord. Join our Discord, link in the description, from Brian the Blue. Dyche finally gone. Let's preach some patience with new coaches, new tactics, etc. Team will be turned over into the summer. Moyes should do fine, steering us to safety by playing the right players in the right positions. Maybe we can enjoy some games without wild expectations or without needing a 0-0 tie to stay ahead of God knows who. And we talked about it in the space, so you guys have heard it already. We're not over the moon about David Moyes, but with the right terms of a contract, I think we're all content with seeing him come in on a short-term basis, steady the ship, get us to a period in the summer where we can really sort of take the next step forward as a club.
I've got some concerns personally, but I think we need to improve regardless. Even tonight, when you plug and play everyone in there, if everyone's healthy, it would look better. But yeah, I mean, I still think there's some, the good part is there's such obvious deficiencies that it wouldn't be hard to fill them. And there were some great points on the space, so I'd recommend checking it out. It was fun. I was happy to do them. I don't normally like the spaces, but we had some participants that I quite enjoyed. So thank everyone for listening and participating. And this episode is no exception to that as well, too. I mean, it really fuels these episodes. So thanks to everyone.
So yeah, I guess just a couple talking points to wrap, guys. I mean, we kind of hit the Broja thing already, but and maybe it's a rhetorical question because the answer is obvious, but seems like we probably have to keep Beto at this point, given until we know more details about the Broja injury at the very least.
No, for sure, James. I think also too, if we're, of course we'll kind of analyze it in a future time, but someone like Beto for David Moyes, I think would be really well received, right? I think of Mikel Antonio and how, often used he was at West Ham as kind of that physical striker, hold-up striker, whatnot, and somebody that can kind of get on the break. And that's a guy in Beto we really haven't seen in transition, but we know he has it. And I think his skill set is going to probably be welcomed, hopefully, by Moyes, because I think that's a guy that, as we've talked about, I think can really kind of unlock our attack a little bit more, and we can get better production.
Yeah, I think you said it all, Sean. I mean, I just really want to see Beto stay and have some degree of success at Everton, because it's just not worked out really well so far, and he hasn't really had a fair opportunity. So we'll see how things develop. And of course, on the Blue Frontier, we're going to be covering all of the latest transfer rumors and everything as we progress through the month. Stay tuned for more episodes. We've, of course, got Aston Villa next Wednesday, so we'll definitely be with you by then, but maybe even another episode before that, depending on how things shake out. So stay tuned. Again, thanks for listening. Join our Discord. Leave us a rating and review on your platform of choice. We really appreciate it. Follow us on all our socials. We are now on YouTube, if you want to listen on YouTube instead of whatever platform you're listening to this now. And we're also on Blue Sky, so follow us on Blue Sky. And with that, we're going to leave it there. Thanks, everyone, again, one last time. Until next time, up the Toffees.